Read slowly, warm voice, this is your hook. I want to tell you about a summer that changed me. Not in a dramatic way, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, the way a lake changes in the early morning, the surface shifting from dark to gold while you are not quite paying attention, and then suddenly the whole world is different and you cannot remember exactly when it happened. I went to a lake cabin in Montana for 2 weeks to clear my head. I had just come through the hardest year of my adult life, a broken relationship, a job I had resigned from because it was slowly making me someone I did not want to be, a version of myself I had been wearing like an ill-fitting coat for so long I had almost forgotten it was not really mine. I needed silence, I needed space, I needed 2 weeks with nothing but water and pine trees and my own thoughts. What I did not need, what I absolutely, categorically was not looking for, was a cowboy. His name was Wyatt. He worked on the ranch that ran along the northern edge of the lake property. He wore the same worn brown hat every single day and had the kind of hands that told you everything about how he spent his time, and he had this way of looking at you like he was reading something you had not meant to say out loud. I did not want to be read. I did not want to be found. I had come to this lake to be alone with my own undoing and put myself back together in peace. Wyatt apparently had other ideas. This is that story, stay with me. The cabin sat at the edge of Heron Lake, which was smaller than the name suggested and more beautiful than any photograph I had seen of it online. It was one large room with a sleeping loft, a stone fireplace, a kitchen that was minimal but functional, and a porch that extended out over the water on old wooden pilings. The lake was clear and still in the mornings. In the evenings, it caught the sunset and held it like it was not ready to let the day go. I arrived on a Friday afternoon.
Morning. This view is something
June.
else.
I
Yeah.
had driven from Denver
Makes the
in
early
9
wake up worth
hours
it,
with one
for sure.
stop,
Coffee's
a
perfect too.
podcast I did not retain a single word of playing the whole way. I carried my 2 bags inside, stood in the middle of the cabin for a moment, and felt something in my chest begin very slowly, like ice beginning to melt, to loosen. Good, I thought, this is what I came here for. The rental had been arranged through a property management company in the nearest town, which was a 40-minute drive and had a grocery store, a diner, a hardware store, and not much else. The listing had mentioned that the cabin shared a property boundary with the Haskell Ranch, a working cattle operation that had been in the same family for 3 generations. It had also mentioned that the ranch hands occasionally used the access road that ran along the east side of the lake. What it had not mentioned, and what I discovered on my first morning when I stepped onto the porch at 7 with a cup of coffee, was that the access road ran close enough to the porch that a person on horseback would be approximately 30 feet away. Which was how I met Wyatt. He came along the road on a dark bay horse, easy and unhurried, the horse moving in that particular smooth way well-ridden horses move, like the effort has been refined out of it. He was wearing worn jeans, a dark blue work shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, and a brown hat that had been broken in over what appeared to be years of actual use rather than decoration. He saw me on the porch. He slowed the horse to a walk. Morning, he said, not loud, just pitch to carry the 30 feet.
We need to talk.
Morning, I said.
I know. What's
He
on your
looked
mind?
at me for a moment with calm,
not good.
direct eyes the color of something between green and gray. You the rental? He said. It was not rude, just the particular economy of language of someone who grew up where words were for information rather than performance. Apparently, I said. A small nod. Wyatt Haskell, he said, my family's land on the north side. Miles, I said, just passing through for 2 weeks. Another nod. His horse shifted its weight and he settled it with one easy movement, no visible effort. Lake's best in the early morning, he said, before the wind picks up. I'll keep that in mind, I said. He touched the brim of his hat once, a gesture so genuinely unhurried it almost seemed like something from another century, and rode on. I stood on the porch and watched him go and then looked back at my coffee and thought, okay, fine, there is a cowboy. This is rural Montana, of course there is a cowboy. He will ride past in the mornings and nod, and that will be the entirety of our relationship, and that is perfectly acceptable. I believed that for about 4 days. On the second morning, he rode past again and said nothing, and I said nothing, and that was fine. On the third morning, he slowed the horse and asked if I had found the kayak that was stored under the cabin porch because most renters missed it, and it was the best way to see the north end of the lake.
I'm listening.
I had not found it. I thanked him. He nodded and rode on. On the fourth morning, I was already in the kayak on the lake when he came along the road. He stopped the horse at the water's edge and watched me navigate a slow turn and called out a tip about using the current near the north reeds that I had been fighting against. I used the tip. It worked. I raised the paddle in acknowledgement. He made that hat-brim gesture and moved on. On the fifth morning, I had coffee waiting on the porch railing. This was not a strategic decision. I am not sure I can explain it better than this. I had made coffee, I was standing on the porch, and I thought about the previous 4 mornings, and I thought about the kayak tip, and I poured a second cup before I had consciously decided to. He saw the cup when he slowed the horse. He looked at it, then at me. "You drink it black?" I asked. A pause. "Yeah," he said. He dismounted in one fluid motion, looped the reins over the porch rail, and came up the 2 porch steps. He took the cup. He stood at the railing and drank and looked at the lake. I stood beside him and drank my own coffee and looked at the lake. We did not say anything for several minutes. It was the most comfortable silence I had experienced in longer than I could easily calculate. "You always this quiet?" he asked eventually. He was still looking at the lake. "I came here to be quiet," I said. "Smart," he said simply. A little more silence. "You grow up on the ranch?" I asked. "Born here," he said. "Left for 4 years, college in Missoula, came back." "Did you want to come back?" I asked.
The lights are starting to come
Thought
on.
about this in the way I was
always a
beginning to
beautiful view.
recognize as his,
Yeah,
fully,
peaceful.
without rushing. "Wanted to know if I did," he said. "Turns out I did." I nodded. That made a particular kind of sense to me that I did not try to explain. He finished his coffee, put the cup on the railing, came down the porch steps and remounted with the same unhurried ease. "Same time tomorrow," I said. I don't know entirely why I said it. He looked at me from up on the horse, those gray-green eyes steady and direct. "Same time tomorrow," he said, and rode off. I stood on the porch for a moment after he was gone. I thought about how I had come here to be alone. I thought about how that had seemed 5 days ago like the most important thing. I thought about how this did not feel like the opposite of that. It felt like something else, something I did not have a name for yet. I went inside and washed both cups, and I thought about his hands on the reins of the horse, and I thought about how I was not going to think about that. I thought about it anyway. By the end of the first week, we had established a morning routine that neither of us had discussed or agreed to in any formal way. He came by the porch. Coffee was ready. We stood at the railing and looked at the lake and talked in the easy, intermittent way of people who are comfortable with silence and say things because they mean them rather than to fill space.
Sounds good. Heading over now.
He told me about the ranch, the cattle, the land, the particular rhythms of work that changed with the seasons. He talked about it the way people talk about things they are genuinely connected to, not performing pride but simply honest about caring. I told him about Denver vaguely, about needing time away. He did not push. He had the specific quality of stillness that makes a person want to talk, not because they feel pressured, but because the stillness feels safe enough to speak into. On the 7th morning, exactly 1 week in, he asked, "What are you running from?" I looked at him. "I'm not running," I said. He looked at the lake. "Okay," he said, in the tone of someone who respectfully disagrees. I thought about it.
Morning.
I had a
This view
hard
is something
year,
else.
I said.
Yeah.
I needed
Makes
to
the early
stop
wake
and
up worth
figure
it,
out what
for
was
sure.
actually
Coffee's
mine
perfect
and
too.
what I had just been carrying because I didn't know how to put it down. He nodded slowly. "That makes sense," he said. A pause. "Same reason I came back from Missoula," he said, quietly, almost to himself. I looked at him. He was still looking at the lake. And I thought, there is something here, something being said underneath what is being said, something I recognize from the inside. I did not say any of that. I drank my coffee, he drank his. The lake was perfectly still in the early morning. A heron moved low across the water, its wings wide and slow and almost silent. We watched it go. The second week arrived with a change in the weather. Not storms, not yet, but a heaviness
I've
in
been
the
thinking
air, a
about
building
what you
quality,
said.
the kind of
Yeah?
atmosphere that
It meant a
rural
lot.
people and animals read better than anyone. The mornings were still clear, but the afternoons turned thick and warm, and the surface of the lake went from silver to a deep, loaded blue. Wyatt noticed it the way he noticed everything, without comment but with a particular attention that you could see if you were watching him. I was watching him. This was a fact I had stopped pretending otherwise about. He was unlike anyone I had spent time with in Denver, where everyone I knew was sharp and articulate and very good at being interesting. Wyatt was interesting without trying to be, which was
We need
rarer
to
and more
talk.
compelling. He said
I
fewer
know.
things, but
What's on your
everything he
mind?
said was exactly what
It's
he
not
meant.
good.
There was no performance in him, no layer of presentation between who he was and what he showed. I found this both restful and deeply unsettling. I had been out for 6 years. My previous relationship, the one that had ended badly in the spring and contributed significantly to why I was standing on a Montana lake porch every morning instead of living my regular life, had been with a man named Garrett who was everything on paper. Smart, funny, handsome, socially confident. We had lasted 2 years and ended because, when it finally came apart, we discovered that neither of us had actually been fully honest with the other about what we needed. We had each been performing a version of ourselves that we thought the other wanted, and when the performance became exhausting, we had both finally stopped. The ending had been mutual and sad in a specific way that mutual endings are sad, not dramatic, not angry, just two people acknowledging that the thing they had been built on slightly the wrong foundation. I had spent the spring and early summer doing the inventory, going through everything I thought I knew about myself and checking whether it was actually true or whether I had just been told it so many times I had accepted it. It was uncomfortable work. It was necessary work. And then I had come to this lake. And Wyatt had ridden along the road on the first morning. On the 9th day, he asked if I wanted to see the North Pasture. He said it simply, the way he said everything. He had to ride the fence line after breakfast, and the view of the lake from the ridge above the pasture was the best on the whole property. If I wanted to take the trail up while he rode the fence, he could meet me at the top. I said yes before I had finished processing the question. The trail was a 40-minute walk through pine forest, steep in places, coming out onto a wide ridge where the land opened suddenly into a view that stopped me physically. The lake lay below and to the south, surrounded by forest and backed by mountains. The morning light was already moving toward noon, but the clarity was still extraordinary, the kind of visibility that only comes at altitude and in clean air. I sat on a flat rock at the top and waited and looked at the view and thought about how strange it was that 2 weeks ago I had arrived at this place hollow and tired, and now something in me was filling back up in a way I had not planned for and could not entirely explain. I heard the horse before I saw him, the sound of hooves on dry earth and pine needles. Then Wyatt came up over the ridge, dismounted, and looped the reins over a low branch. He came and stood near the flat rock. He looked at the view. "Good right," he said. "Very good," I said. He sat down on the rock beside me, not close, a foot of space between us. But in this open landscape where space was everywhere, that particular foot of space felt like a choice. We sat and looked at the lake and the mountains for a while. Then he said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah,"
The lights
I
are
said.
starting to come on.
A pause. He was
It's
looking
always
at
a
the view,
beautiful
not
view.
at me.
Yeah,
"You
peaceful.
come here alone. No one calls you, or if they do, you step inside and keep it short. You read a lot. You kayak alone. You seem like someone used to their own company." Another pause. "But you made coffee for 2 on the 5th morning." I waited. "Why?" he said simply. I looked at the view. "Because the first 4 mornings I noticed you coming along the road," I said, "and the 5th morning I thought I would like more of that, more of whatever that was. The coffee was the best excuse I had." A long silence. "What was it?" he asked, "whatever that was." I thought about that carefully. "Quiet that felt like company," I said, "which I did not know I needed until I had it." He looked at me then. For the first time up here, he turned and looked directly at me. His eyes in the mountain light were more green than gray. He had a line of sweat along his jaw from the fence work. His hat was pushed back slightly. "I have not talked to anyone the way I talk to you," he said, "in a long time." "How do you talk to me?" I asked. "Like it counts," he said. I held his gaze. Something in the air between us had changed. Not suddenly, it had been building the way the weather had been building, that slow accumulation of heaviness that becomes undeniable before it becomes anything else. "Wyatt," I said carefully. "I know," he said, in a voice that suggested he had been having a conversation with himself about this for several days. "Do you?" I said. "I have been trying to figure out what this is," he said. "For about 6 days. I don't have a lot of experience with." He stopped, started again. "I grew up with certain ideas about myself, about what I was supposed to want." A pause. "Some of those ideas are turning out to be less reliable than I thought." I was quiet for a moment. "That is a big thing to be sitting with," I said. "Yeah," he said. Are you okay? He thought about it. I think I am, he said. It's more clarifying than anything else, uncomfortable but clarifying.
Morning. This view is something
Below
else.
us, the
Yeah,
lake shone in the
makes
noon
the early
light.
wake up worth
A
it,
hawk
for
turned
sure.
lazy
Coffee's perfect
circles in
too.
the blue above the water. I leave in 5 days, I said, not as a warning, just as a truth. I know, he said. I don't want you to feel any pressure from whatever. Miles, he said. Yeah. I am a grown man, he said quietly. I know what I am feeling. I am not confused about what I feel. I am just new to it. Those are different things. I looked at him. Yeah, I said, they are. We sat on the rock for a long time after that. The hawk below us found a thermal and rose high, and the lake turned deeper blue as the light shifted. Neither of us said much else. But when we walked back down the trail together, him leading the horse, me beside him on the narrow path, our arms occasionally brushed in the way of two people who are not moving apart from each other when that
I've been thinking about
happens.
what you said.
And neither of us moved
It
apart.
meant a lot.
On the 10th evening, the storm came. Not violent. Montana summer storms rarely are at the lake elevation, but steady and warm, the kind of rain that is more relief than threat, drumming on the cabin roof and turning the lake's surface into a million small circles. Wyatt had stopped by in the late afternoon before it started, not on horseback, on foot this time, which was new. He had brought a paper bag from the ranch kitchen. His aunt had made a spare batch of cornbread, he said, and it would go to waste otherwise. I invited him in.
We need to
We sat at the small kitchen table while the
know.
rain
What's
built
on your mind?
outside and ate cornbread and
good.
talked in the easy way we had developed over the past 10 days. And the storm came, and the lamp in the corner made the cabin warm and yellow inside, while the rain made everything outside dark and sound-filled and close. At some point, the conversation slowed and we were just sitting, the rain around us, the lamp between us, and he was looking at the table, and there was something he was deciding. He looked up. Can I tell you something? He said. Yeah, I said. When I left for college, he said, there was a guy in my program, engineering. We were friends, good friends. And there was something there that I did not have a name for it. I did not let myself look at it directly. I just stayed friends with him, and when I came back to Montana, I told myself I had left it back there. That it was about him specifically and not about anything in me. He paused. And then you walked onto that porch, he said. I looked at him across the small table in the lamplight. And I realized, he said, that I had not left anything back in Missoula. I had just been carrying it quietly. The rain was loud and warm on the roof. I know that feeling, I said. I know you do, he said. That is part of what made it easier to look at. You exist so comfortably in your own skin, Miles. You don't make excuses for what you are. You just are. I have been watching that all week, and it has been doing something to me that I can
I've
only
been meaning
describe
to
as
tell you.
permission.
I'm listening.
I felt something shift in
Thank
my
you.
chest, something move and resettle. You don't need my permission, I said. No, he said, not yours, mine, he paused. Yours just made mine easier to find. I looked at him across the table, the rain, the lamp, the cornbread between us that had gone cold and neither of us had noticed. I reached across the table and put my hand near his, not on it, near it, a question. He looked at my hand, then he put his over it. Warm and still and completely certain. The rain kept going on the roof of the cabin. The lake was invisible outside, all sound and darkness. And inside this small lit space at the edge of the water, something that had been building for 10 days arrived quietly at what it had always been moving toward. The morning after the storm, the lake was the clearest I had seen it. The rain had done something to the light, washed the air clean in a way that made the mountains seem closer and the water seemed to go down further than it had before. I stood on the porch in the early morning and looked at it and thought that this was what the right kind of change feels like, not the dramatic tearing apart kind. The quiet settling kind, the kind that clears things. Wyatt came along the road on the horse at the usual time. He saw me on the porch. He slowed. He did not have the usual expression of careful, held-back ease. He looked like himself, fully and completely himself in a way that was different from all the mornings before it. He dismounted and came up the porch steps, and I handed him his coffee, and we stood at the railing and looked at the cleared, brilliant lake.
The lights are starting to
Sleep
come
okay?
on.
I asked.
It's always a
Better
beautiful
than I
view.
have in a while, he said.
Yeah, peaceful.
I nodded. I understood that completely. I want to talk about what happens after you leave, he said, direct, the way Wyatt did everything. Okay, I said. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just want to say it out loud so it exists somewhere other than my own head. Say it, I said. He looked at the lake. I know you live in Denver. I know this was meant to be 2 weeks and nothing else. I know I have a ranch and a life here and you have a life there and none of that is simple. A pause. And I also know that what has happened this week is the most honest I have been with myself in my entire adult life. And I don't want to just let that go back to being quiet when you drive away on Friday. I turned to look at him. I don't want that either, I said. He looked at me. Then what do we do, he said. I don't know exactly, I said honestly. But I think the first thing is that we don't pretend it isn't real, and the second thing is that we figure out the rest from there. He nodded, slow and certain. Okay, he said, that works for me. The last 4 days had a quality I struggle to describe accurately. They were not grasping, they were not rushed or anxious. We both knew the shape of the time that remained, and we moved inside it with the particular care of people who have decided to be fully present rather than spend the ending grieving it. He took me on a longer ride on the third to last day, on a spare horse from the ranch, a calm gray mare who had the same unhurried quality as her owner. We rode the fence line along the west pasture and came down to the lake on the far side where the water was shallow and clear over white stones, and the willows grew down to the water's edge and trailed their fingers in the current. We stopped and let the horses drink. How long have you known? I asked, not about me, about himself. He understood the question. Longer than I let myself know, he said. Does that make sense? More than almost anything, I said. My family is, he started, stopped. My dad is a good man, a fair man, but there are things about this world that his world didn't have room for, and I grew up inside his world.
This view is something else.
Pause.
Yeah.
I love my family.
Makes the early wake up worth it.
Land.
For
None
sure.
Of that
Coffee's
changes.
perfect too.
No, I said, it doesn't have to. Does it get easier? He asked, the telling, the living out loud. Yes, I said, every time. It gets lighter every time you tell one true thing. He looked at the water where the horses were drinking. I told my cousin Jesse last night, he said. I looked at him. How did it go? I asked. A small, almost surprised smile. He said he didn't care what I was as long as I still helped him with fence repairs in August. He paused, which is Jesse's way of saying he loves me and nothing changes. I laughed a real laugh. Wyatt smiled, and it was the fullest smile I had seen from him, not wide, that was not his way, but complete, like all the parts of his face had agreed to it at once.
It meant a lot.
That's a good cousin, I said. He is, Wyatt said. We rode back along the lakeside in the late afternoon light, the horses side by side, the water glittering to our left, the mountains ahead, the sky enormous and clear above. And I thought about how I had come here 9 days ago feeling hollowed out, and somehow, through a series of morning coffees and a ridgetop conversation and a rain-filled night at a small kitchen table, I had come back to something I recognized as myself. Not because of Wyatt, not only because of him.
We need to talk.
Because being seen clearly by someone honest enough to see you without flinching has a way of reminding you of what there is to see. What has always been there. What was never lost, only temporarily buried under a year's worth of wrong-shaped choices and the particular exhaustion of performing a life that doesn't fit. On my last evening, Wyatt came to the cabin after the day's work was done. He came in his regular clothes, clean dark jeans, a white shirt, the same worn brown hat, and we made dinner together in the small kitchen, something simple, nothing elaborate, and we ate on the porch while the lake went from gold to orange to the deep, slow violet of a Montana summer evening. Tell me what Denver is like, he said. It's a city, I said, loud and fast and full. I like it mostly. It suits me mostly. Mostly, he repeated. There are parts of my life there that I think I built because they seemed like the right things rather than because they were actually mine, I said. I am going back to take some of those apart. What will you build instead? He asked. I don't know yet, I said. I think that's okay. He nodded. He looked at the lake. I have never been to Denver, he said. I looked at him. It's worth seeing, I said carefully, especially with someone who knows the good parts. He held my gaze. You offering to show me the good parts? I'm offering, I said. He was quiet for a moment. I don't know how to do long distance, he said. I don't know how to do any of this. I have no map. Neither do I said. I have done this before and I still have no map. Nobody does. You just decide that the thing is worth figuring out. Is it, he asked, worth figuring out? I looked at him in the last of the evening light. The hat, The steady eyes, the particular quality of complete honesty in his face that had been undoing me slowly from the first morning. "Yeah," I said, "I think it is." He reached over and took my hand, the same way he had across the kitchen table in the rain, certain, still. We sat on the porch as the sky went dark and the stars came out over Montana in a way that only happens far from city lights, not scattered but crowded, the whole sky thick with them, the Milky Way visible as a band of pale light across the dark. "I don't have a lot of experience with this," he said quietly. "With any of it, I don't want to handle it badly." "You are not handling it badly," I said. "I might," he said, "down the road, I might need time or space or more conversations than you want to have." "Wyatt," I said. "Yeah. I came here to be alone because I needed to figure out what was mine," I said. "I did not expect to find something that felt this mine this quickly. I am not in a rush. I am not looking for something perfect or easy. I think I would like to keep talking to you for as long as that makes sense, with no map, just honest." He was quiet for a long time. "Just honest," he said finally. "Just honest," I said. He held my hand under the Montana
lights are starting to
stars
come on.
until the night got cold.
It's always a beautiful
and then we
view.
went inside, and it
Yeah,
was
peaceful.
the last night, and it was the best night, and it was enough. I drove out on Friday morning. He was on the porch when I loaded the car, not on the horse he had walked from the ranch. He stood there in his jeans and his white shirt and that brown hat, and he looked like everything about this place that I was going to miss. I walked up and looked at him. "I'll call you when I get to Denver," I said. "I'll pick up," he said. I laughed. He smiled, that full, complete smile. I got in the car, I started the engine, I rolled down the window. "Wyatt," I said. "Yeah. Thank you for the coffee tip, and the kayak and the ridge and all of it." He looked at me for a moment, then he touched the brim of his hat, that unhurried, old-century gesture that had made me feel something the very first time I saw it. "Drive safe, Miles," he said. I drove away from the lake on a clear Friday morning in July, the mountains visible in my rearview mirror for a long time before the road curved and the trees took them. I called him when I hit the highway. He picked up on the second ring. We talked for 3 hours. Denver in August is hot and golden and relentlessly alive. I came back from Montana and I took apart the parts of my life that did not fit.
Sounds
I
good.
put the sublease on the
now.
apartment I had never quite made feel like mine and found a smaller place with a balcony that faced west. I started turning down work that paid well but cost me something I could not afford to keep spending. I started telling people the truth about things I had previously managed diplomatically into vagueness. It felt each time like a window opening. Wyatt came to Denver in September. He drove 12 hours, 2 days, stopping overnight in a town in Wyoming that he said was worth stopping in. He arrived on a Saturday afternoon in his truck, the brown hat on the seat beside him, and when I came down to the street to meet him, he looked at the city around him with the calm, observant attention he brought to everything. "Bigger than I expected," he said. "I'll show you the good parts," I said. He looked at me, that steady green-gray gaze.
Morning. This view is something
"You
else.
said you would,"
Yeah.
he said.
Makes the early
We spent
wake up
4
worth
days
it.
together.
For sure.
I showed
Coffee's
him the
perfect
city.
too.
He asked questions about everything with the genuine curiosity of someone who had spent his whole life in wide open space and found the compressed vertical world of a city genuinely fascinating rather than overwhelming. He was the same in Denver as he was at the lake himself, entirely without adjustment or performance. I found this newly extraordinary and said so. "You are the same everywhere," I told him on the third evening, sitting on my new west-facing balcony as the city went amber in the sunset. "Only place I know how to be," he said. "I'm working on that," I said. "You're closer than you think," he said. I looked at him. He was looking at the city with the same attention he gave the lake, finding it worth looking at, finding the beauty in it the way he seemed to find the beauty in most
I've been
things,
thinking
not
about what you
dramatically,
said.
not with declaration, but
It
quietly,
meant a lot.
completely, and for real. I thought about a Friday morning 9 weeks ago when I had driven away from a lake in Montana with no map and no plan and a phone call that lasted 3 hours. I thought about honesty, about the specific freedom of it, about how I had come to that lake to find myself and had instead found someone whose presence made me more myself than I had been in years. How those two things were not contradictions. How the right person does not replace you or complete you but simply makes it easier to be what you already are. "I want to come back to the lake,"
need
I
to
said,
talk.
"in the fall if the
I
cabin
know.
is available."
What's on your mind?
"I can make that happen,"
not
he
good.
said, a small smile. "October," I said. "October," he said. The city went gold and then dark, and the first stars appeared above the buildings, faint against the light pollution, but there, present, real. We sat on the balcony until the night was full, and neither of us was in any particular hurry. And the silence between us was the same kind it had always been, the kind that feels like company, which I now knew was one of the rarest things in the world and one of the most worth keeping.